Hello, everyone. I'm going to read a small little book to you today. It's called How Much is a Million? It's by David M. Schwartz, and the pictures are by Stephen Kellogg. And the pictures are very beautiful through this, so I'm going to show you the pictures as I read it. So look at this. How much is a million? That's a real big number, everyone. Let's see about this. Look at this, gorgeous pictures. So look at the numbers at the top. 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million. So that number there is 1 million. So it says, Marvelosimo, the mathematical magician. Oh, this guy's a magician. Look at this. The pictures are just beautiful. Okay, here we go. If 1 million kids climbed onto one another's shoulders, they would be really tall, wouldn't they? Taller than the tallest buildings, higher than the highest mountains, and farther up than airplanes can fly. So 1 million kids piled up on top of each other. If you wanted to count from 1 to 1 million, it would take you about 23 days. Can you imagine 23 days? There are 7 days in a week, so that would mean it would take us 3 weeks plus 2 extra days just to count from 1 to 1 million. Wow, and there are 24 hours in a day? That's a lot of counting. Woo. If a goldfish bowl were big enough for 1 million goldfish, you see the boy? He's putting the goldfish in the big bowl. It's a huge bowl. So if a goldfish bowl were big enough for 1 million goldfish, it would be large enough to hold a whale. Wow. Whales are huge. Presto, 100 stars. If this book had 1 million tiny stars, they would fill 70 pages. Climb aboard. That is so good. We're going to climb aboard and we're going to go on a trip in a hot air balloon. We're all up in the sky with the stars. We're still on our trip in the stars in our hot air balloon. Wow. This is a long trip. Now it says, there you have 100,000 stars. If we take this 7-page journey 10 times, we'll pass 1 million stars. Let's do that later. I'm hungry, one of the children says. I'm thirsty. So, see, it takes a lot of counting and a lot of time. How big is 1 billion? If 1 billion kids made a human tower, let's see how high this is going to be. They would stand up past the moon. Wow. So 1 billion children would stand up past the moon. And remember, 1 million children were taller than the tallest buildings on top of each other. If you sat down to count from 1 to 1 billion, you would be counting for 95 years. It was 23 days to count to 1 million. It's 95 years to count to 1 billion. That's a large number. If you found a goldfish bowl large enough to hold 1 billion goldfish, it will be as big as a stadium. Look at that. As big as a stadium. That's huge. Absolutely huge. Oh my goodness. Now we're in our hot air balloon over the stadium. And they have the stadium all filled with water. And normally a stadium is where they play football or sport events. If this book had 1 billion tiny stars, its pages spread side by side would stretch almost 10 miles. Oh my. So here are pages side by side. So the statement was, if this book had 1 billion tiny stars, this book side by side would spread 10 miles. Wow, boys and girls, my school is about 10 miles from my house. It takes me 20 minutes to drive there. So, wow, the pages of this book would spread from my house to my school. How tremendous is 1 trillion? If 1 trillion kids stood on top of each other, they would reach way, way, way beyond the moon. Ooh, so 1 billion kids reach the moon, 1 trillion way beyond. These are some big numbers, aren't they, children? It's like, oh my goodness. Beyond Mars and Jupiter too, and almost as far as Saturn rings. That's how far 1 trillion kids would go. Now, this number is 1 trillion. Look at that. Look at the people in their little vehicles up in the space. Who knows, one day. If you wanted to count from 1 to 1 trillion, it would take you almost 200,000 years. So counting to 1 million was 23 days, counting to 1 billion was 95 years, and counting to 1 trillion would take you 200,000 years. Woo. Look at that. The kids are all lined up. If you put 1 trillion goldfish in a goldfish bowl, ooh, that's a huge bowl. Huge bowl. Can't even see it all. It's so large. So if you put 1 trillion goldfish in a goldfish bowl, the bowl would have to be as big as a city harbor. So a city harbor, pretty large. If you put 1 trillion of our stars onto a gigantic roll of paper, it would stretch all the way from New York to New Zealand. So here we are. This is our final journey. So if you put 1 trillion of our stars onto a gigantic roll of paper, it would stretch all the way from New York to New Zealand. I hope you had fun today with these large numbers. So if you can't count to 1 million yet, you can't count to 1 billion, Work on counting to 100 first. Then go to 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, then 1 million. And numbers, there are an infinite amount of numbers, but this was a fun little story and I loved it. It just related to how big numbers can be. So I hope you enjoyed this cute little story, children. That was Miss Cindy reading to you. Bye for now.